Hi, in this video we're going to cover a few potential issues that you just need to watch out for when manufacturing overseas or even in America. These things come up now and then and you just need to try to solve them as best you can. I mean, no one can account for everything. Mistakes happen. Sometimes you make a mistake on the order, the factory might make a mistake, and then you've got to deal with it. So the most common is that something's a little bit delayed. When you're first starting out, you want to get started as soon as possible. I would recommend not rushing to get your product out as quickly as possible. Take the time to make sure it's right. It's better that you do an inspection at the factory if it's overseas before shipping the products. 100% absolutely must do, because if you ship the products and then you find the issue, who's going to pay to ship them back, right? There's this huge argument about that. It's never going to go in your favor. Manufacturers will always say, you know, once it's made and you've shipped it, it's your problem. It's very unlikely they're going to pay everything, bring the goods back, remake everything and do everything for you just to keep you happy. Most likely is that you'll be left stuck with low quality products and having to pay to fix them if you don't deal with it on the factory site before it leaves. So, late order. Yes, it can happen. You know, production's 2 or 3 weeks late. What happens with factories is, say, they have your order for 1,000 units, but then another customer comes in and says, hey, I want 10,000. Well, they make a lot more profit off the 10,000 unit order than your 1,000. So they say, okay, let's move the 1,000 unit order back and let's do the more important, bigger order, which makes us more profit. I mean, if you were running a factory or business, you would do the same, and that's why it happens. So there can be delays, and all you need to do is keep pushing the factory to manufacture on time if they're communicating that there is an error. And the best way to avoid there being any late order is just to check in with them at different steps in the production. If they've told you it's 6 weeks to make the product, every 7 to 10 days, check in and ask the progress from your representative at the factory. That way you're at least on top of it and you know what's happening. Quality issues. So your first order with a new factory, I recommend getting them to send you 10 to 20 samples of the final manufactured product to you as quickly as they can. So as soon as the first 10 or 20 are ready, instead of waiting for the full 500 or 1,000 to be ready, ask them to send you those by express freight, so DHL, FedEx, whatever's the fastest, so you can get your hands on them, check them and see if it's exactly what you want, because they're still in production of the other items in your order. And, you know, it's still early days and you can still fix the problems that you find, if any, at the factory. So maybe the labeling's wrong, maybe they did your logo wrong, maybe you find all 20 have these weird scratches on them. Whatever it is, the sooner you get samples in your hands that you personally check, the better. Even if you're doing an inspection at the factory later for everything, you know, with an inspection company, you still need to get 10 or 20 products in your hands and check it. And this is the best way to kind of see, you know, how does the actual final finished product look. And then you can also use those samples for photos for your listing, etc. So it's great to have those in hand. If quality problems do happen, it's just a negotiation, right? There's no fixed rules. Some factories will help you more, some will help you less. If they think you're an important customer, they'll do more to help you. So it's all down to how you portray yourself, your business, how you communicate. I mean, just saying you have to fix it doesn't mean they will, right? You can say it 10 times, they might still ignore you. You've got to kind of negotiate with them, because to fix your order, let's say you ordered 2,000 pieces of something, 2,000 products. They've got to stop another order, delay someone else's order, take your one, put it back on, rework your one. So they're spending all the labor, the cost and effort to refix your one, while at the same time they're not making new orders, so they're not getting new profit. So instead of getting more profit from making new orders, they're losing money spending more manual labor on your order. So you can see why they resist having to fix it. The thing I normally do is, if I find at an inspection there's too many defects, I ask them to go through, sort the whole shipment out, pull out the ones with the bad defect, and either just leave them out. If it's, say, 50 or 100 out of 2,000, just leave them out, because I don't want them going into Amazon with 50 or 100 defects, or I ask them to replace those 50 to 100. But I mean, the best thing, honestly, if you're just starting out and dealing with a factory, the easiest might be just to ask them to remove 100 or 200 of the ones with defects and ship the rest. And then you can ask them to remake those with your follow-up order. You don't want to be shipping in, 5 or 10% defects into Amazon, because that's going to reflect in your reviews. So it's better to just ask them to pull out the defective ones. If you can't agree with them to fix everything, they can, the last resort, as a negotiation tactic, you can say, okay, you're not going to fix it for me, you're not going to redo it, you don't think there's a problem, but what I'm asking you to do is just to resort the whole order, take out the ones which have a scratch or damaged logo, and then just ship the ones that are good, and we'll deal with the 127 ones with problems another time. And that's really, the best solution to move forward if you can't get them to pay for everything to fix everything. And you may or may not be able to do that. That really comes down to the factory and your negotiation skill with them to do that. I would just say keep your cool. If an issue comes up, keep your cool. Be rational. Highlight why it's not acceptable. Say it won't sell. Say you'll get refunded by your customers. Explain to them why it's not you can't have that. And the factory will be more likely to listen if you're rational, cool, show pictures, explanation as to why it can't do. The people who go crazy, write these emails, hey, you've got to fix it, right? Going angry, it doesn't work with most Asian suppliers. They don't show emotions in business. It doesn't, they just lose respect for you if you lose your rag too much, if you go crazy too much. You're supposed to, point out the reasons why. You should be a little angry, but you shouldn't take it to the point where, we're shouting, I'll leave bad reviews for your factory on the internet, and don't go to the extreme. Just deal with it in a professional manner, showing why something is or isn't acceptable. Shipping problems, similar. So sometimes what happens is products can be delayed, held at customs because there's a lack of paperwork. You might not have the right certification. So I recommend, before placing your order with the factory, that you ask them the shipping cost by air and sea, and at the same time any certificates for the product that's needed for your market, ask them that at the same time before placing your order. Why? Because then you've got a rough idea of the shipping costs, you've got a rough idea of the duties. The factory might tell you then that, there's this document you need to ship to America. And the other way to avoid shipping problems is only deal to factories that have shipped to the countries that you want to ship to. So a factory may have shipped to America but not to Europe. If they haven't shipped to Europe, you've got to check well before the order if there's any special documentation, because every country has different rules. So you do need to check that in advance. Other shipping problems that come up is damaged products in transit. And the way to avoid that is to do a drop test of the product before it leaves the factory. So this is basically, you put all the product into the box, into the carton, into the packaging, and you drop it from a certain height. And by dropping it this way, you're testing, what if someone drops the carton during transit? Another test is called a vibration test, where you literally shake the box around on a special machine. And sometimes what you find is, if you've got like a fancy box with lots of colors on it, that those colors may rub off on each other. So that's usually the problem, is the packaging rubs off on each other, or the packaging's too loose and products move around and bounce and get damaged that way. So making sure everything's tightly packed, nicely packed, checking the carton, the shipping carton before it leaves the factory, checking the products before it leaves the factory, communicating regularly with the factory. You should be able to avoid most problems, and if problems do arise, you just need to try to solve them as best as you can. Hopefully they won't, and that's why I strongly recommend, for your first order, you keep it as low as possible, because that way you can see, one, if the product's going to be successful or not, and two, if any issues come up, you reduce your risk as well. If you're ordering 2, 3, 4, 5,000 units first time from a brand new factory and something goes wrong, then there's a lot more at stake than if you had a 300 piece order. So try to keep it as low as possible, get the product going, and then reorder, and take the lessons from the first order to the next. But I would say, no matter what, check every single shipment as if it's your first time dealing with a factory. Check every single order. Inspect everything before it leaves. You have to. We did literally tens of thousands of shipment out of China, and we checked every single order, and we never had an order which was absolutely perfect. Never once. There was always something wrong. Yes, sometimes it was just very small and just a small percentage, but there's always something wrong. So you've got to find out, what's wrong here. That's the mentality you should be going in with. Do I have all the documents? Is the quality good? Is the packing good? Is it going to ship okay? You should be more negative, pessimistic than optimistic here. The more pessimistic you are and the more you cover off all of the different potential issues, the more likely you are to prevent those issues from ever happening. And there's a lot of moving parts, from making a product to shipping a product to manufacturing a product to delivering into Amazon. There's lots of different people involved. The product goes through, goes thousands of miles across the world. You do need to do everything you can to make sure that it's going to be okay in transit, and then even later in the customer's hands once it's in Amazon as well.